In the year 2001, a research vessel launched from Earth. It housed 4 different biomes indistinguishable from Earth, 30 different animal species. It was incredible. But then 7 minutes after the launch, the ship vanished without a trace. For 1,000 years, folklore was all that remained of the space station. Until one day, the space station reappeared. Only this time, it was on a collision course heading straight for Earth. Many attempts were made to rescue the space station, but on the last-ditch effort, they tried to land 2 heroes on the space station. When they arrived, they found out that things were much worse and much stranger than they had originally thought. This is Space Station Silicon Valley. Now, that's a really nice story, but the real question is, why am I in my garage and why are there so many boxes? Well, you may or may not know this, but I have what I call the Dan Cave in the garage. It's basically a man cave, retro gaming, all that stuff. And it's in a bit of a disoriented state right now. And so it's my goal to, throughout the telling of the story of the development of Space Station Silicon Valley, clean my garage. Hey, look at this wooden boat model. Look at this thing. That's pretty cool. So our 2 bumbling heroes land on the space station only to find out that all of the animal inhabitants had been fused with technology, which was the original experiment of the space station. And they had eaten or killed all of the onboard scientists. I mean, there's literal missions in this game where you have to like collect human heads. It's the kind of game we're talking about. I mean, it was dark humor is what it was. And the Monty Python British humor style, Wallace and Gromit looking aesthetic that you get was all deliberate. That kind of humor was intended to separate it from the games of the time. We didn't have Conker's Bad Fur Day yet. But Space Station Silicon Valley didn't do its comedy through like lines and quips and voice acting. It did it through storytelling. And we are going to get into the development of that story and how all the pieces came together right now. It's very bright. It's not a quiet car to drive in, but it's mine. So, development began in September of '95 as part of a 3-game publishing deal, which included juggernaut Grand Theft Auto, a little strategy game called Tactics, and all 3 games were planned to release on the PlayStation, PC, and Sega Saturn. Why am I driving? Where are we going? Well, that's a little surprise for you later. And actually, one of the interesting things about the development of this game is that almost the entire development team all started on the same day in September at DMA in Dundee, Scotland. Now, a fun fact I want you to remember is that this game is being developed completely on Silicon Graphics computers. That's going to come into play later. And actually, those kits had a lot to do with how the final art came to be in the game, because the graphics output was so limited back then that the art style really had to take form based on their limitation. When rendering out the desired graphics, everything had this kind of muddy, soft focus effect. And somebody on the team mentioned that it reminded them of the claymation style of Wallace and Gromit. That art style shaped how Space Station Silicon Valley looked from that day forward. Hi. Just one in parking?
$34.95. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi. You gotta check my bag or?
Yeah, you have to leave this right here in the car. So
I
don't
can't
know what
film in
else
there?
No, you can't come in. Yeah. See this stuff?
Oh, no way, dude. All right. Okay, I'll come back around then. Okay, well, just like this video keeps getting derailed, development of Space Station Silicon Valley seemed to have been going well. They ran into a huge problem with the silicon computers. They were unable to render the levels the way that they wanted them to. So the project, which was moving so smoothly, just like this video, which was going so smoothly, suddenly hurdles started to show up over and over and over. The game had to get pushed back, delays were inevitable, but then hope, in the form of another project being developed at DMA, a little game by the name of Body Harvest. I'm gonna let y'all know right now, my cell phone is horrible. So we're gonna get a little bit of footage in here, just so you can see some cool stuff, but I'm probably not gonna film the rest of this video on my phone. That would be a bad experience for you, annoying editing stuff for me, but consider my cell phone the body harvest of our little Space Station Silicon Valley adventure. So development of Body Harvest was in full swing, and the N64 development kit happened to be the most powerful hardware in the building at the time. Space Station Silicon Valley team walks over to the Body Harvest team and says, "Hey, can we borrow that?" Remember when we talked about silicon graphics computers? Well, it turns out that the assets that they were working on from those computers could be directly transferred to the N64 dev kit. They had way more available power than they thought they did. So what did they do with the remaining power? They did what I think is probably my favorite thing about Space Station Silicon Valley, and that is the animations and the AI. In fact, many of the experiments that they did due to the increased hardware of the N64 were things that didn't even make it to Space Station Silicon Valley. But they were used in a later DMA Design game you may have heard of called Grand Theft Auto 3. So I wanted to stop here for a second because this is a pretty big point, and I don't really talk about it very much in the video, and I feel like it deserves it. Yes, I shaved my beard, spoiler alert. So they were designing a game where you're a microchip, essentially, and if you find a broken animal, you can take that animal over and you're now controlling it and you get all of its attributes. They kind of borrowed that concept and those animations and that kind of framework to build Grand Theft Auto 3. Now they already had the concept of it, obviously, because they had a Grand Theft Auto game already in development. But in order to do that in like sort of a 3D space, that kind of takes another level of understanding. And so the Space Station Silicon Valley team were actually the ones who developed Grand Theft Auto 3, not the original Grand Theft Auto team. And so it's kind of interesting, but you can see a little bit of a through line from Space Station Silicon Valley to Grand Theft Auto 3 if you look at the various kinds of concepts and gameplay mechanics they were working with. Obviously, they're two very different games, but a lot of the ideas developed because of Space Station Silicon Valley, used or unused, made their way into that team's future games. So Grand Theft Auto 3 may not be what it is today if it wasn't for Space Station Silicon Valley. So, that being said, let's keep watching. Space is freaking cool, guys. I don't know if you heard. All right. Well, in case you needed another reminder that NASA is the freaking best, there you go. I wish I could have brought my camera gear inside. But that being said, we're going to continue on our journey and see you guys at the next stop. So this is my brother-in-law, Jared.
Hello.
Jared, what's your favorite Nintendo 64 game?
I don't really have experience with Nintendo 64, so I might have to go with a standard Mario Kart.
Mario Kart's good. Have you ever played a game called Space Station Silicon Valley?
No.
All right, well, interview over then. Space Station Silicon Valley originally had a 1998 release window, and it was the only game that was going to be released around that time besides Yoshi's Story. It even had the backing of Nintendo to help push the marketing. Unfortunately, the publisher BGM was hemorrhaging money. They were losing fast. A quick acquisition by Take-Two Interactive actually saved the company, but because of the change in leadership, it was impossible for the game to be released around the same time. So the game was pushed back to October. What else was happening in October of 1998? Now, nothing specifically in October of 1998 causes that much of a disruption of their plans. But here's what we're looking at as far as the timeline. We have the original release date of March, which we already talked about, that got pushed back to October. In between March and October, the summer of 1998, Banjo-Kazooie comes out. And Banjo-Kazooie reinvents what it means to be a 3D platformer. October of 1998 and the following holiday season, you have F-Zero X, Turok 2, Mario Party, and The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. So now, instead of competing with Yoshi's Story, we're competing with some of the best games the N64 has to offer. And as much as I love Space Station Silicon Valley, it is not going to compete, especially in the marketing department, where Nintendo would have been happy to lend some of its marketing in March. But now in October, we have several first-party games coming out. There's no way Nintendo's going to lend that kind of marketing strength anymore. So they were left to fend for themselves and subsequently drowned. This is the part of the video that hurts the most for me because this is a game that's obviously near and dear to my heart. Oh, I finished the Dan Cave, by the way, because it's 6 months later now. Well, it is what it is. There was no Wii Virtual Console release, no re-release of any kind. A weird spin-off PS1 game and Game Boy Color game soon after that didn't sell very well at all. And then the team moved on. This game is the definition of a cult classic. It's pretty high quality and it has a very small number of hardcore fans. But it's not the kind of thing that would warrant a remake or a sequel. Space Station Silicon Valley lands in a weird place, from its dark humor to its awkward animation to its structure and gameplay. It's not something that the world likes, but I'm kind of weirdly thankful for that. Thank you so much for watching, and huge thanks to Noops, the artist who created the logo art for the thumbnail and wrote the Space Station Silicon Valley style music featured in the video, including the track you're listening to right now. Please go and check out the full album and follow them on Instagram. All those links are in the description.
This is actually the first video in a series bringing you some edutainment about the development of some of my favorite video games of all time. But if there's a game that you'd like me to cover in an upcoming video, leave a comment below and I'll see if there's anything interesting there to talk about. Also, I host a podcast called Retro Logic, which is a topical retro gaming show where we do trivia, feature guests, and foster community within the retro space. You can check that out at our website, retrologic.games. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.